I think I'm going to start. It's 2:02, almost 2:03. And so I wanted to thank everybody to the Net Capital monthly webinar series, Women in Private Equity. This month, we have convened an amazing panel of women to discuss how to trust your gut. But first, let me introduce you to Net Capital and my amazing team. I'm Carol Mirko, obviously, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Netcapital Advisors and Netcapital Inc. And joining us on the screen is Cecilia Lenk, who is our CEO,
Hi, everyone.
and thank you, and Corrine Chrysler, who's in the audience. But she's our amazing CFO, and we're an all-women C-suite, and that's why we're really focusing on women in private equity. So we have created a digital private equity ecosystem that is centered around the democratization of the private equity markets. Our digital private equity ecosystem has its roots in the Jobs Act, which is Jumpstart Our Business Startup Act, which was passed in 2012 to open opportunities for job creation by relaxing some SEC regulations to encourage funding of small businesses. Netcapital.com is actually our digital equity funding portal, which is SEC registered under the Regulation CF and allows non-accredited investors to invest in private equity. So that really, the importance of that for you to know is that up until 2016, non-accredited investors could not invest in private equity. So it's like a really big deal. I also want you to know that accredited investors can also invest on the platform. So it's not just for non-accredited investors. Netcapital Advisors is part of the ecosystem, and we provide consultant services to entrepreneurs as they prepare to raise capital on the Netcapital platform. We also incubate companies and provide valuable investor introductions. Netcapital Inc. is publicly traded on the OTC as NCPL. And Cecilia, Corrine, and I are here to celebrate, promote, and support women in private equity. Our webinars are designed to foster open conversations and discussions about topics that are relevant to us as women business leaders. Trusting your gut is one such topic. How many times now, I mean, I hate to say it, I probably have lost count in my life, business and personal. Did I like not listen to that little voice, or I dismissed anxiety, right? Like, only to say to myself, why didn't I listen to that voice, or why didn't I pay attention to that feeling of anxiety? Cecilia, Corrine, and I try to tap into our guts and actively discuss it in our management meetings. We all admitted that in our previous careers, talking about gut instincts was not openly discussed. We wanted to bring this topic front and center, and our panelists will all be bringing their insights to this topic. So we did trust our gut that this will be a lively and necessary conversation for women founders, investors, and in life. And oh, by the way, like, there is science, the science supports that our body is actually wiser than our mind. So I think that is, so for anybody who's skeptical and thinking this is woo-woo, it is science. So now I want to introduce our panelists. And so when I introduce you, you could unmute yourself and just say quick hi. And then I'll start with the flow of the questions, and we're really hoping that this just turns into this beautiful discussion. And please, whoever's in the audience, feel free to pop some questions in the chat, and we're going to be monitoring that. So, okay, so I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So Ana Flores is the founder and CEO of We All Grow Latina Network, the first and largest network of Latina digital influencers with a mission to elevate the voices and stories of Latinas through the power of community. The company's annual We All Grow Summit was named one of 19 conferences every creative should attend in 2018 and 2019 by Forbes. We All Grow Latina is also part of the 1% of Latina-owned companies to hit the $1 million revenue mark. Way to go, Anna. I mean, and next is my friend Debbie Phillips. She's a pioneer in the field of executive and life coaching as one of the first, how about this, first trained coaches in the world. I mean, that is just the coolest thing.
I'm old.
No, you are you're just getting into your stride. She is the inspiring founder of Women on Fire, a membership community that features gatherings, retreats, coaching circles, and more to support women's successes. She's also an author, speaker, and producer known for her work in transforming women's lives. Her gift is her ability to see and nurture the strengths and talents of the women she works with, and I can actually attest to that. Her credits include the book Women on Fire, 20 Inspiring Women Share Their Secrets and Save You Years of Struggle, volumes 1 and 2. Both amazing books. And in fact, I've gotten to know a lot of the women in the books. So it's so great. Denise Chisholm, she's a self-described data geek, okay, at heart. Data geek at heart. That's like an oxymoron, right? And and seasoned financial services industry professional with over 20 years of experience as an equity analyst, portfolio manager, and now sector strategist. At Fidelity, she challenges the status quo daily and how she works to find the best insights for shareholders. In her current role, she focuses on sector strategy, its application in diversified portfolio strategies, and ways to combine sector-based investment vehicles. So, you're going to love when you hear from Denise, because that all sounds like, oh my God, how can she ever use her intuition, right? And Trisha Ramos. Trisha is a certified high performance coach and is the co-creator of Bold Conscious Leadership Group coaching programs and Bold Conscious Business Mastery for entrepreneur coaches and corporate leaders in transition. She is also the creator of Divine Space Mastermind, a 90-day program for women who are ready to experience breakthroughs in life and business. As a co-founder of LiveMasterminds.com, she and her partner are building a multi-sided platform for entrepreneurship coaching, helping to minimize the barriers to entrepreneurship and shorten the learning curve that many new business owners face. She's also raising capital on the Netcapital platform for LiveMasterminds.com. So welcome, Anna, Debbie, Denise, and Trisha. We are in for an amazing discussion. And I want to actually I'm going to go right to you, Denise. I know because this is a private equity, kind of, fintech. We're, in the space of raising capital or helping entrepreneurs raise capital. So people are always going to think of digits and numbers, and where does intuition fall into this? And here you are, as your self-described data geek. How do you pair intuition with data-driven decision making?
Yeah, in some ways you have to use both. So I really do have a very unique role and process at Fidelity, where I use historical probabilities on macroeconomic and fundamental data, which pretty much nobody does. Although to me, it's always been an intuitive way to think about the markets. When somebody has a question, you say, well, has that been true in history? So it always made sense to me. So you can provide all of these rich data-driven conclusions of why I want to own energy, or why I want to own utilities, or why I don't want to own the market here. And in some ways, we think of all decisions as a binary one, yes or no, energy. But in fact, that's not it in investments. It's not just a yes or no decision. It's how much, at what time, for how long. All of those, I think you have to use what I call your sort of scientific base, which you would call your intuition. Because the way I think about intuition is it is the sum total of all your very scientific experiences that are talking to you at all times. And even if you can't put your finger on why, you know that maybe the energy bet shouldn't be 10%, maybe it should be 5%. Because you know in the back of your mind that the data you've seen is maybe it's a little bit more rare than the data you've seen in the past, or maybe there's not enough instances to give you that conviction. So I think that you need to be open to that and to trust that process. And in some ways, the more experience you have, the more scientific intuition is, because it is the sum total of those experiences. So you need to be open to that, be data driven, use data analysis, and then sort of sit back and think about how I feel about that size, about that positioning, about that yes or no decision. So I think you can use it as a balance.
Well, I think that's really fantastic, and I love the way you expressed it as, kind of like it's a sum of like all of your knowledge, right? So, and that's actually stored in your cells, right? I mean, eventually that becomes your part of your fabric of being. It becomes habits, right? And those habits are stored. So of course, then it fires your intuition because you're like you have knowledge in there somewhere.
Right. And you just
So
don't know how to describe it to somebody else.
yeah, well, that's the part that I think is really important to understand, in this whole discussion, that there always going to be somebody that just, won't accept that, trust me, right? And
Right.
and and maybe we'll get into that with some of our other. And if anybody has a thought about that at this moment, you feel free to jump in. Um, but you know, I was thinking about right now, right? I mean, we're at a very interesting time. And, I imagine that you're looking at data, that will, is may say something else than what's actually happening. Because I mean, we're coming out of a pandemic. Hello, have we, this hasn't happened in 100 years. Like, how do you, where does intuition or your gut come into play with looking at that sort of data?
So it's the difference of historical analysis versus analogs. There is no analog for anything you ever go through ever. No recession is similar. The great financial crisis wasn't like the bubble, the technology bubble before it, nor was it like the mid 90s, nor was it like a pandemic. They're all different, but there are lessons from history that we can use. So all economic contractions are similar in the way the stock market responds to them. So if you can recognize those patterns and understand the key drivers behind those patterns, like when fiscal stimulus is delivered, when earnings estimates begin to rise, when stocks bottom based on valuation spreads, I'm getting a little too quanty here, but all of those things are very similar cycle to cycle, despite the fact that the impetus for the contraction was completely different.
Mhm.
So by stepping back and sort of seeing the forest for the trees, you can really start to establish those patterns. But looking at the minute detail, you'll never be able to do that. So
Mm,
in some ways, you have to withdraw yourself and look at the data on a bigger scale.
yeah. And I think that that's one of those um, notions of just being quiet, right? Like
Yes.
and
What's,
so
what's the quote in our business, Carol? Don't just do something, sit there.
which is
Right?
great, totally, exactly, because and it's a you don't want to be reactive, right?
Right.
So well, I think that this is a great segue because I want to tap into Debbie. And um and Debbie, you created this amazing community of women, women on fire. um what I mean, so Denise just talked to us about just looking at data, but also having a historical perspective, and then like, doing nothing, right? Like settling down, like as a coach, right? One of the first coaches, right? Like can you paint some perspective for us there?
Well, yes. And first of all, thank you. It's so wonderful to be here with all these smart people. And um, I came from a government and politics background, a corporate background when I became a coach. And the reason I did was because I was just very, very type A. And this notion of what if I slow down was really kind of anathema to me. And it was hard to do. And in slowing down, the first book I read was a book called Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm sure many of you have heard of him. And I remember like leaving my corporate job, I was taking a sabbatical and trying to figure out how to slow down by easily drinking a cup of tea so that I could listen to my gut and listen to my intuition. And that was painful to learn to do. Once I did it, everything in life changed. And so I happen to agree, I so totally agree, with what Denise said. You need to use both. So there's that analytical mind that you have and then your gut. And one of the ways to get to your gut is really, you have to be able to slow down. And that's when, all of the goodies kind of come up. And I see in the chat stream already, there are people who do listen to their gut. So finding that balance is really important.
Definitely, definitely. So
I want to say one thing about the
yeah.
body, because you also mentioned that, and many of
Mhm.
you may know, there is a lot of energy testing for your body, because as you pointed out, your body knows. So that's one of the reasons you want to slow down, to let your body, but you can actually, there's all kinds of testing. Maybe some of you have done that. So your body, you don't even have to use your mind. Someone professionally trained can test your body for a yes or no answer on whether something is good for you. And I must just say, since we're in a group of financial people, I was choosing my own wealth management company, and I literally went to my chiropractor between the two, and I chose the company that was a yes. So, and I've never looked back, and it's an all-women company.
That's so fabulous.
Yeah.
So tell me, was there a gut feeling that was involved in moving away from one-on-one coaching to creating the Women on Fire community, right? Because that's like, so you've had many transitions. Like,
Right.
what brought you to those transitions?
Right. Always listening to my gut. What is the next right thing? And again, I've been doing this for 25 years now, so I better be pretty good, because I practice every single day. Before, I'm on California time, so I've been, it was my early morning, and I was doing my morning practices, which include in my journal, I test for my gut all the time, because, we can say we have an intuition about something, but we only hone it, really, as Denise was saying, we hone that by checking it. And so there's something coming up that I'm really kind of questioning, but I'm going to do it. And so I make notes of things that I have strong intuition about, whether I do it or I don't do it. I make notes, and then I revisit it once it's happened. Sometimes I'm wrong, mostly I'm right. But I pay attention to the times I'm wrong, and I'm like, wow, my gut really told me to do that. Had I not done that, it would have been a mistake. But I test myself all the time to sharpen my intuition.
Which is really obviously important to hear, because I think sometimes we could be lazy about it too, right?
Right.
And then we don't
Right.
trust it, right? Because we're
Right.
not testing it, right?
Right.
Which
Right.
I think
Right.
that's really a great tip, Debbie, because writing these things down and then really like going back to them, I think
Yes.
it's an amazing tip.
Yeah. Well, I treat it like a science. I treat my intuition like a science.
And as we know, there is science around it, right?
Right.
It's just like, so that's a great. So do you want to talk a little bit about like how, you in your Women on Fire group, you help women, become better listeners to, and really tapping into that, and, share a little bit about that.
Well, yes. I mean, that's so important to just listen to yourself. But I also I have all these different strategies. How do you get to what you want to do in your life? And it does start with having a daily practice. I think that is the most important thing you can do. I was just in somebody's home. It was lovely. They invited me, stayed overnight, got up in the morning, did my own practices in the quiet of my room, went out into their space. They got up. two televisions blaring, Today Show and Good Morning America, a lot of chaos. And I was like, oh my goodness, most people start their day like this. I used to start my day like this. And no wonder, and everybody felt frantic in the household. And I am the biggest believer, and it's one of the things I've stated over and over to the Women on Fire members. I think the single most important thing you can do for your intuition, your gut, your healthy lifestyle, if you spend 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you can give yourself, even if you're a mom and you've got to get kids up, if you can get up 10 minutes early to just devote that time to yourself, journal, pray, do nothing, whatever it is, to just be quiet, set an intention. I do this, what if I'm traveling, I can do this in 3 minutes. This is kind of going to sound a little crazy, but like this morning, I was cleaning my aura, which just took like 1 minute I have a particular way of bringing in energy to clear myself. I got a whole bunch of, because I'm on early morning time by the East Coast, I had all these texts and emails, and already I was starting to get overwhelmed. And I just cleared and cleaned myself so that I could come on this and be truly present. So there's lots of little tricks. I encourage every woman, every person listening to have a daily practice for yourself.
I think that's tremendous advice. And I certainly do. Like so, and
What is your daily practice? Do you mind sharing, just again, so anybody who doesn't
oh, sure.
have a daily practice?
So I am a student of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I'm also a student of Grandmaster Nan Lu, so who's a Qigong master.
Yes.
And so the first things I do in the morning, I journal. I've really gotten into the practice of writing down, what I'm currently thinking about, and then what I want, what I don't want, and then I go into meditation. And so I do that meditation, and then I do the qigong, and which is basically, it's to kind of clear your energy channels, your and 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 then I just sit quietly and I drink my matcha tea. So
Fabulous. I'm going to start using you as a role model. That's right. That's great. How long does it take you?
Oh, I wake up 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I'm done by 8. So it's like I have a very long morning ritual. And just so everybody knows, like, not that everybody needs to know this, but I'm on a healing journey. So I'm very devoted to it. As far as I'm concerned, it's the work of my life. So
Yes.
so nobody needs to have that level that I'm in, but Debbie asked, so I shared.
Good. It's wonderful to know. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
obviously we're seeing you today, vibrant, focused, present. I think it speaks to what you're doing for yourself. So good for you.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. I want to move on to Anna because I love Anna's story. So we could just get a little window into your story, and then the intuition that you use to to leapfrog your company to the next level, which you had some advisors that were kind of like, that's not a good idea. So let's just dive in. I tell everybody, what you've created with We All Grow Latina is just phenomenal.
Well, I feel so seen. Like we need more of these spaces where we can go deep, as I feel we're really going deep, and in these conversations where years ago, right, like the financial world and the intuitive world or this healing world, the conversations that we really wouldn't intersect. And it was hard, right, for me that I label myself as an intuitive entrepreneur, but I've had the guts to do that the last few years where it's finally validated, where it's finally okay, and where I'm not being minimized. Because from the very beginning, my company, my idea, my vision was minimized because I was a mommy blogger, right? That over 10 years ago, I come from 15 years working as a TV producer in the Hispanic industry, always by and for, but big companies, Univision, MTV, et cetera. And when I had my daughter in the middle, she was born in 2007, and then we hit the recession the next year, really hardcore, because I had quit my job. my ex-husband, husband at the time had lost all his clients. So we were like in the middle, like the worst moment possible. And my, without being able to find a job, et cetera, and I had a baby at home. I found this medium of blogging. And for me, that medium of blogging not only saved me, but also connected me with the most incredible women, and this power that I felt where I could take ownership of our stories, and especially for Latina women, where we are still not represented, right? We're completely underrepresented, but I saw the future. I knew that this was the place where our voices and our stories would be democratized. Now, I had no data to prove that, but I knew it, right? I
Right.
had the vision, and my intuition was my GPS. It was what was moving me forward. It was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I built a blog called Spanglish Baby with a partner at a time, my best friend from college. And we were both going through the same thing. And it was a place where parents who were raising bilingual and bicultural kids could come and learn from us and from experts and celebrate our stories and celebrate the Latina culture. We're talking 12 years ago when I launched that. And 2 years later, I launched Latina Bloggers Connect, which is now We All Grow, which Latina Bloggers Connect, when we launched it in 2010, was a blogger network connecting bloggers with brands. We now know that as influencer marketing, and it's $1 billion industry. Back then, it was like, oh, how cute. Mommy bloggers want to get paid.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So again, no data. And for me, not only was it existing in the world of creating content for women, but creating content for Latina women. So really all I had was my gut, was my intuition, was my know-how, was my community of women that I knew that, we would validate and support each other, because we didn't even have data about the power of the Latina consumer, which we now have. Right? And so now that we're able to finally bridge those two things, we're definitely able to exist from a different place. But for the last 10 years, that's the reason why my company is self-funded, because there was no way for me to sit down and with an investor and try to validate my gut, right? And so that I knew that this was an industry that needed attention, right? That we are go-getters and we are getting things done without having that validation, without having investment, without having that visibility. And we're still getting things done, and we're still moving the needle. We're still moving the economy. We're still moving culture, et cetera. So I learned to use my gut out of necessity. And I've always been an intuitive person. I've always been a spiritual person, but I always kind of kept that to the side, right? Because I couldn't show up as my whole self. And navigating that part of showing up as my whole self really came through in 2017, when I almost lost the company, when I almost had to file for bankruptcy, because influencer marketing had finally become a thing, and it had become a tech thing. And I really didn't want to be the CEO of a tech company at that point. And it had become commoditized, right? It had become transactional. And I knew that the power that we really had was the power of this community, of these voices, of these incredible women that were building creating their own paths, thanks to the digital tools available that went beyond blogging, that were entrepreneurs, et cetera, which is where we stand now. So I remember I actually have an email that I sent my partner at the time, my business partner, like 2 years before, and the subject line was gut check. And where I tell her, like, listen, I think we need to move away from influencer marketing. But how do you do that when we had a really reached over $2 million in revenue that year. And most of it was coming from influencer marketing. And we had a team of women that I needed to support, et cetera. How do you move away from when your gut is telling you, you need to make this big step, yet it means destroying a lot of other things, right? And making some really bold moves. So the moves, your intuition will tell you. It will tell you what you need to do. And then it's up to you. How do you make the decisions that take you to take those? It's intuition aligned with courage, right? And it's how do you develop that courage to take the steps that you need to do when you feel supported? And since I didn't take the steps, all the steps were taken for us, and we stopped receiving clients. Contracts dried up because the agencies and our clients were so big that they were building influencer marketing in-house. So they didn't really need us anymore. But the reality is that we didn't need that anymore. What we were a community. We were that voice and that safe space for thousands of women and continue to be so through our conference and through digital events, et cetera. So basically what happened was that I almost had to file for bankruptcy, but then through my own practice and through my own teachers and just guides that came through at that moment, I kept getting the message like just coming to me like, you have to trust, you have to trust, you have to trust. That was just, and then I can't even explain like magically, because it's so many things that started happening and people that started showing up in my life, like a lawyer that came out of referral from a friend that was like, I am a incredible man that came to me that was like, I'm going to help you. I'm not going to charge you a penny. You are not going to file for bankruptcy. I had already paid half of it. And he's like, you're going to stop that. And I'm going to teach you what you're going to need to do. And you're going to come back up. And then just a lot of things kept coming through that I was like, you're going to trust and you're going to rebuild this. And that's exactly what we've done. We've been able to pivot, and everything that I learned and those practices and that honoring my intuition and bringing it to the table as part of my business and the success of my business was what allowed us to really take on what happened with the pandemic last year, where we were again facing having to close the business because by then 80% of our revenue was coming through our live events. And our summit was in May. We had to cancel it 2 months before with a huge debt of over $200,000 in tickets already sold. So again, we almost had to go through, but I knew immediately what to access, what were the tools that I needed to use my inner tools that would get me through, the courage that I needed to make the decisions that I need to make last year, which were really tough decisions. I had to let go of one of my partners. I had to bring in a new partner, just really tough decisions, but they were all led through my intuition, telling me that these were the right things to do for the growth of where the company is going now.
It's quite a story, right? I mean, but you wouldn't be in this on this panel if you didn't trust your gut, trust your intuition. And, when there isn't a path that's already carved out, like what else is there, right? It's like, and those thoughts, I mean, think of all the pioneers, in the world, anybody from Edison to Gandhi, whatever, they had a compass, and that compass was their intuition, right? So really just kudos to you for really having the courage to trust it. And I see, things just getting better and better, and the statistics for you are going to be there. So it's just you they're
They're
now going to support your gut. Like it's like,
a little bit of validation feels nice.
definitely. So I want to move on to Trisha. Because it's Trisha is a business coach, right, and also a founder, and she's raising money on the Netcapital platform for her livemasterminds.com. And what I mean, you've had a really interesting career too, right? So you were in the retail business, and it's like, did your gut have anything to do in like shifting out of that industry into coaching and creating masterminds?
Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be here with all of you and hearing your stories. And I see so many parallels, and there really are no accidents why people find who they find. And, one piece of idea I want to bring into this conversation is the power of divine dissatisfaction. So in retail, as you guys, we've all seen retail shift and shrink. And yes, for so long, I had a gut feeling that it was time for me to leave and actually, do my thing, which is to work with people, be a coach. But I kept leading with logic. You should be happy. You have a secure job. You have a great paycheck. You have benefits. It doesn't make sense that you want something that really you don't really know much about. And it took a health crisis and 4 years after the health crisis to actually find that voice and to give it power to move me in this direction. So 2 years ago, I launched my coaching business full time, coming off of the heels of a 60-day massive, pretty much upheaval in my life, where I went through a breakup. I was burnt out from my job, and I moved out of New York City into the Hudson Valley. And all of those choices, to me, when I look back on it today, they were all contributing to me letting myself die off, because to some extent, tuning into our gut really is, especially because we've been so programmed to apply and lead with logic and reason, to actually tune into your gut and move with your intuition requires really dying to the idea of who you thought you were. And it's releasing the judgment of whether something is good or bad and really putting on that sense of adventure. So the timing is so perfect for this conversation for all of us right now. And 2020 last year was really such this idea for this platform came because there's such a need. More people need answers, and more people are turning towards coaching. And there's a lot of people that have left their corporate jobs that are, have decades of experience, that when I talk to a lot of clients or prospects, everybody wants to turn into the healing journey for themselves, but they also want to assist others to do the same for them. And you know what we give to ourselves, we do give to others. And so, last year we launched these programs really for the purpose of serving the need. The world was in the middle of lockdown, but we knew that there were people out there who were determined to come out of the lockdown better than they were before. So we didn't let the obstacle of who's going to pay us during the lockdown deter us. Instead, it was about, let's figure out how to find and attract the people who are ready to do this work. Let's be ready and available and deliver what it is that they're looking for. And let's learn along the way. So after a few months of doing that, kind of Anna's story inspired me a little bit to share this part. I wasn't sure I was going to. We did reach the end of the year where I was back in that divine dissatisfaction moment where I just thought to myself, and I said to my partner, if all we're doing is coaching, it's not it for me. If all we're doing is delivering programs together, I don't see why we're doing it together. Mm-hmm. So it was a moment of really leaning in to, you might not call it intuition, right? Because when we don't feel good, we are so good about distracting ourselves and looking for reasons to feel better right away. And I think for me, honing your intuition is actually really paying attention when something does not quite feel right and giving yourself permission to explore it, to voice it, give yourself the space. Yes, Debbie, I am all about deceleration. Give yourself the space to just sit in that discomfort. And, from that, it was a decision. Okay, we're going to keep doing this. We're going to keep the partnership. Now what? And within 36 hours of that now what moment came this download of this idea of this multi-sided platform for coaches looking for clients, clients looking for coaches, and service providers that want to support coaches in launching and scaling their businesses.
Wow. And, and I immediately thought of Denise when you were talking though, because it's that, that space you gave yourself, right? That deceleration, is what Denise said in the beginning. And, feel free everybody to jump in here now. We could just have a conversation. I don't know if there's any questions, but I think that, it may seem that, just kind of framing it in the sense that, we're, Netcapital is a fintech, but so much of what is going on around us at Fidelity, at Live Masterminds, at, We All Grow Latina, at Women on Fire. It's like, we're all businesses, right? Like, so, don't anybody out there, don't miss the point here. We're all in it to make money, right? Like, because, and we want the money to thrive and to live joyful lives. But, we have to learn how to balance. And for us to, succeed and shift, kind of the model, right? In such a way that we see more joy and more success and more abundance, then it doesn't matter if you work at Fidelity or Women on Fire or Netcapital. We are all, we're all doing this, and that's why I want to have these conversations. That's why, and Cecilia, please jump in, because I think you have some, keen insights, I believe, as well, in terms of intuition. I mean, let's face it, you invested in Netcapital, right? Like, after you had a successful sale of your company.
So everyone's comments resonated with me. And just to give you a little bit of background, I come from an engineering background, a science background. I have a PhD in biology. So, I'm very analytical that way. But at the same time, I also think I have a very creative, very more artistic side that wants to get involved in things that will use my imagination, will require leaps of faith, if you will, and a sense of adventure. So as Carol pointed out, after we sold our last company, I became a angel investor, and that was fine, but I had this underlying sense of dissatisfaction. I wasn't really seeing everything I thought was possible. I was disappointed at how closed these deals were. Like, if you weren't in the know as an accredited investor and you belong usually to, to one of the angel groups, or you, had a good network, this didn't happen for you. You couldn't invest in these companies. And so when I first heard about Netcapital, I was like, that is really something that could transform what to date has been a very closed industry. The ability to invest in private companies for everyone. And so that's been the vision of what we're putting together. And on a daily basis, I think I use a lot of analytical skills, but I also use a lot of just plain intuition. And I think, as Denise pointed out, sometimes that's really grounded in history. Like, this person is responding the way I've had trouble with people who responded that way in the past. So let me just keep an eye on that mentally. And, we've seen companies that are in this space, and some have been very successful, some have not been, and so you can balance that out. But at the end of the day, you sort of say, well, I see some things in this company, whether it's the people or the approach or whatever, that I can't quantify it, but I know they will make a success. So I think trusting your intuition and combining it, as everyone here has, combining it with a keen sense of analysis and history of decision making, I think those things are really important.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Cecilia. We actually have a question from Tamara Harris. As you have grown in your journeys, what is the time between your visioning, your future seeing, and the physical manifestation of that? Anybody want to tackle that question?
I love that question. Yeah. I mean, that is really, for me, it's a quick reminder to reflect on, where am I energetically? Because if I'm focused on the doubts and the worry and the fear, then I'm heavy and I'm dense. and the likelihood that I'm going to attract the people or the conditions that are going to create the opportunities that will lead me to what I'm trying to manifest, that's going to take a lot longer. However, you know, I've also experienced, as I'm sure many women here have, the idea of bending time, where before you even are able to articulate what it is you're looking for, that person's in front of you, and Anna's example with the lawyer. And so I think that this is really, people often think it's something with the outside, and this is such internal strategy.
I totally agree. I want to share too that we have some comments in the chat. Like a gentleman said, as a man who has been tapping into his gut for the past 40 years of work, I am delighted to be here. And so, and we're delighted you're here too.
He's my
And
business partner, by the way.
oh, okay.
That is the other half of Live Masterminds.
Okay, well,
Great.
excellent. Well, we're happy, and Tamara, LOL to you too. And
I want to add to what Tamara's question too, and I think, and a lot of what we were talking about. What was the phrase you were using, Denise?
Don't just
Basically-
do something, sit there.
yeah, well, basically, yeah, because it's something that I've been saying a lot. My team is, I hope they're not tired of hearing this yet, but that I've been saying a lot, like we are choosing to remain in the pause right now, this year, right? It has been such a difficult year for everyone. It was a year, 2020 was a year of being reactive, right? Like trying to sustain the business, surviving, being there, going back to our deep practices, doing the work, right? To know that if we're going to come back on the other side, what is that going to look like? And how are we going to be better for it? Nothing of this going back to the normal. But how are we showing up now, right? With everything that we have learned, that we have integrated, and kind of like staying in that flow. So that your question, yes, you know, things, when you are in that feeling of flow, and to be in that feeling of flow is a lot of what Debbie was saying, is this daily practice. I mean, I'm impressed by the practice that Carol and Debbie have. It's this daily practice, and it's this daily tapping into courage. And I keep using that word because it is very tied into your intuition can inform you, but it's up to you, right? Which choices you're going to make and which actions you're going to take. And into that comes in a lot of patience and a lot of trust, because sometimes we have to trust in divine timing. What we believe, or what Trisha was saying, like bending time, what we believe in time, and what we, as type A personalities, which I assume many of us are, right? It is sometimes hard, and it's like, okay, I see it, I know I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, right? Why am I not seeing? Why is this not manifesting? Because sometimes it is about remaining in that pause with that trust and with that confidence of where you're going towards, and knowing that the right moment, the right people, the right opportunities will show up if we keep doing that work and if we keep showing up for ourselves.
And I have to say that Cecilia, Corrine, and I have that conversation often, that like, you know, you wonder, you know, the old model of like, you know, pushing sales, right? It's like just, you know, smile and dial, smile and dial. And, you know, we've really shifted it to say, like, let's draw it in. And that's why we're also doing these webinars, right? Like we, you know, by creating the community, more people will know what we're doing, and we're going to draw to us the types of companies that will perform well on the platform. And it's very similar, I think, and I think it's energetic, right? And I think but it's not without, like, you know, we do, you know, we you know, we look at numbers too, and we understand what our objectives are. But you know, I think in the bigger picture, you know, changing the model on how I think we're all doing it. And I think and I love the word even courageous, because I think it's also courageous for us to have webinars with these topics, right? Like, you know, in a very male dominated, and I don't even want to say male dominated, masculine, right? Because it doesn't have to be just men. It's a, you know, masculine energy. And and the importance from our perspective that that these values are moved forward. And so
Well, we've talked a lot about our values and what we really see as important to the company. And Carol's talked a little bit about that. But, one of the reasons that I'm really love these webinars in this format is part of our goal is to just really build a lot of connections and build a bigger network of women who are um, in private equity, in spaces adjacent to private equity, and really maybe coming out of the pandemic, start to create a community that may not have existed before. Just really be out there as much as possible, talking to people, sharing, having everyone, share and communicate what they're doing, because again, every single one of you is doing such amazing things. I'm in awe always.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I also just want to say, I think there's nothing more valuable than a well facilitated community. It's really powerful. So I congratulate you on what you're doing. I also want to say something really quickly to Tamara, because as being a coach all these years, one of the number one things I get is, where are my goodies? I've been working so hard. Where's my goodies? I felt that everybody, almost everybody I've ever worked with feels that way. And some of the time, this is where the practices come in, because some of the times you have to just be super grateful for what you've already been able to accomplish. It's so hard to not see what you've already done. And that in itself sometimes is a miracle, even if your goodies in the way you expected. And sometimes your goodies, what you expect, isn't the goodie you get. So that's the other thing I would just always urge people to be open to. Sometimes, I always have this thing. It's like, it's going to be this. If you have a plan, it's going to be this or something better. And so to be open to the exact goodie might be something better. So I just wanted to add that, because I get that whole thing around, wait a minute, when's it coming?
Yeah, where's my goodie?
Where's my goodie? That's yours.
I love that. Denise, there's a question for you. In a world where you are respecting investment committee protocols and speaking with investors, how are you able to get to explain your intuitive views in the face of data that may not support your gut?
Well, I think in some ways you can always translate it to data. That nagging voice that there's something wrong with this, there's something wrong, I don't feel right, this bet size isn't right, this position isn't right. There's usually some analytics behind it, but then you go, yeah, that's what I missed. I mean, I'll give you sort of a very specific example in equities, but when OPEC, the oligopoly and for the crude markets cut production, you would expect energy stocks to outperform. And they did that. I can't remember what year it was, 2014, 2015. And, I sort of had a negative bias on energy. And I'm like, I really need to respect this data. It has 80% odds. And there was something about it. I was like, I don't really trust it. But all right, I'll put out this report. I'm changing my mind on energy. And this is why, because OPEC cut production, and this is what usually happens, and this big historical analysis. And it was sort of wrong the entire time for the course of, I'd say, probably 6 to 7 months. And I was kind of like, And I knew when it was wrong when I said, geez, what are the ramifications if I change my mind? And that's when I knew that's the right answer, right? If I'm wondering about the ramifications of changing my mind, I already know it's the wrong answer. So the question is, what's the matter with the analysis that I did? And it's sort of no surprise that US shales were sucking up all the production and actually outproduced what OPEC did. So there was a rationale behind it. That was what was different this time. So we're all dealing with imperfect data. To say that you're data driven is not to say that you're perfect and you've got 100% hit rate. So there's always going to be some nuances, and there should always be some science behind the nuances as a rationale of why you change. So instead of sort of, I could say, well, my gut told me that it was wrong. I actually went back, scrubbed the data, knew exactly why I was wrong. And the headline in my next report was, I was wrong and I'm changing my mind. So I do think you can really marry the two. And you just need to listen and sit with it, as everybody here talked about, and then go back and study the why. Because the why is there. Sometimes we hear it, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we need to explain it. I'm in a business where I need to explain it, so I got to explain it.
Yeah. Wow, this has been amazing, and I think we're butting up to, it's 2:56, so and we can keep talking. So, any closing comments, like thoughts on on tips or anything for our attendees. And once again, like, please, share, I think we've shared in the chat, like, everybody's contact information. And we hope that, these webinars are wonderful for everybody, right? So.
Carol, I do want to add something since we're speaking about data. And it was mentioned earlier that, how we feel, our bodies, our entire being, we feel the changes on a cellular level. And anytime we are overriding our gut, anytime we are not moving in alignment, that is doing a number on our nervous system. And so when you are programmed to not listen to your intuition, it's no wonder that as women, we hit a certain time in our lives, and it's getting younger now, where there's autoimmune issues, disease in the body that we can't quite find the source for. And it's not physical. There's always another component. And I think when Denise was talking earlier about looking at the data on a bigger scale, and it just, the word wholeness came to me, because some of these new businesses that are opening, they don't have past data to look on. It's a completely new model. And so now you have to find another source for where that sign or that signal may be coming from. It's in our bodies. And so, typically when someone is making a change, a big transition in life, it's also accompanied with some sort of disease in the body. So for me, that is data that is, pointing you towards something as well. So pay attention to that too.
Well, that's really a wonderful comment, and one that is completely true. And I'm a walking unfortunate example of that. So
Yeah. Me too.
So if we've done anything today, I think what we collectively have done is, that by following our guts and, moving, having practices, slowing down, listening, that we will all thrive, and we will all succeed, and we all rise together, and we live in an abundant universe. So I think if we can kind of collectively, as Cecilia said, create these networks after the pandemic that shifts the consciousness around how we do business, I think we're going to see a new world. So I want to thank everybody. This, as usual, it's like energizing, right? I just don't want to let you go. Because I think we all crave these conversations. I think the world's craving these conversations. And I thank all the attendees for being here and being part of the conversation. And thank you for the questions and the comments. And everybody knows how to reach everybody. And we're looking forward to continuing the relationships, growing the relationships. And please, anybody else out there in the attendee universe, get in touch with any of us. We'll be happy to continue the conversation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.